Pull over here, man. The words cut through the thick September fog drifting across London's Soho district like a whisper from another dimension. Through the rain-streaked window of the black taxi, Jimi Hendrix was staring at something that made him forget he was already 40 minutes late for his meeting with Kit Lambert at Track Records. On the grimy pavements of Wardour Street, a teenage boy was playing guitar like his life depended on it. And what the guitar god witnessed in the next few minutes would change everything he thought he knew about raw, untamed talent. It was a gray September evening in 1966, the kind of London night when the drizzle never quite stops, and 17-year-old Marcus Thompson was setting up his usual spot outside the Marquee Club, hoping to catch the overflow crowd before they disappeared into the underground. The battered Watkins electric guitar he'd bought for £15 from a pawn shop in Camden was held together with electrical tape and prayer. His small Vox practice amp, barely louder than a television, was propped up on a milk crate he'd found behind a pub in Tottenham. His worn-out Chelsea boots were splitting at the seams, and his faded denim jacket had been patched so many times by his mother that it looked like a map of their struggles. But none of that mattered when Mac started playing. The sound that emerged from his battered equipment was something that seemed to channel the restless energy of a generation caught between yesterday's conformity and tomorrow's revolution. Mac had been coming to this exact spot every Friday night for 8 months, ever since that devastating week when his father, Jimi Thompson, had been laid off from the Liverpool docks. With his family barely scraping by in a cramped flat in Kilburn, and his younger sister Sarah needing new school shoes, every shilling Mac earned from street performing went straight into the biscuit tin his mother kept hidden behind the tea kettle. Their two-bedroom council flat was a world away from the swinging London the newspapers wrote about. The heating barely worked in winter, the walls were thin enough to hear every argument from their neighbors, and his mother, Betty Thompson, worked double shifts at a textile factory, coming home with tired eyes and hands that smelled of industrial bleach. But music was Mac's escape from all of that. It wasn't just something he did for money. It was the only thing that made him feel like he could transcend the gray concrete of North London and touch something infinite, something that made the daily struggle worthwhile. As he carefully tuned his guitar with strings that had been on there for months because new ones cost too much, Mac took a deep breath and surveyed the familiar chaos of Friday night Soho. Young mods in sharp suits hurried toward the clubs, their hair perfectly styled and their attitudes sharp as razor blades. Girls in Mary Quant dresses and knee-high boots clicked past on the wet pavement, heading for the underground venues where the future of British music was being written one riff at a time. Tonight felt different somehow. The energy in the air was electric, charged with the kind of creative tension that made London the center of the musical universe in 1966. Mac had been working on a new arrangement of a song he'd heard whispered about in the clubs, an American blues number called Hey Joe that seemed to capture something dark and mysterious about the changing times. He'd spent countless hours in their tiny flat's kitchen, the only space where he could practice without disturbing the neighbors, working out every detail while listening to Muddy Waters and B.B. King records through headphones connected to his father's old radio. Max studied the way these blues masters bent notes, how they used silence as powerfully as sound, and the precise emotional timing that could make grown men cry. But when Mac plugged in his guitar and hit that opening chord progression, something magical happened. The shy kid who struggled to order food in restaurants, who got nervous talking to girls, who preferred to blend into the background of his rough comprehensive school, completely disappeared. In his place emerged a performer who could command attention, who could make time stop, and who could channel the raw energy of rock and roll through his fingertips. The transformation was immediate and breathtaking. His guitar seemed to wail with the accumulated frustration of working-class youth across Britain, every note carrying the weight of dreams deferred, and hopes that rock and roll might somehow change everything. The melody of Hey Joe had a haunting quality that seemed perfect for the gray London evening, and Mac's interpretation added layers of complexity that turned the simple blues progression into something approaching art. People began stopping in their tracks, their Friday night plans momentarily forgotten as they watched this young musician pour his soul into every note. A crowd started forming, drawn by the raw emotional power emanating from the small amplifier and the teenager who played like he was channeling something ancient and powerful. But 3 blocks away, caught in the typical Soho traffic that moved like treacle on Friday nights, Jimi Hendrix was growing increasingly restless. He was already late for a crucial meeting that could determine the direction of his rapidly evolving career in London, and the gridlock stretched endlessly ahead of his taxi. Chaz Chandler, his manager and former Animals bassist, was making frantic calls from the passenger seat, trying to smooth things over with the record executives who were waiting. That's when Jimmy heard something that made his heart stop beating for several seconds. It was blues, but played with a passion and intensity that cut through the urban noise like electricity through water. The sound was coming from somewhere ahead, carried on the damp evening air, and it reminded him powerfully of why he'd fallen in love with the guitar in the first place. "Driver, what's that sound?" Jimmy asked, pressing his face against the window and trying to locate the source of the music. The cabbie peered through the fog toward the growing crowd 3 blocks ahead. "Looks like a busker, mate. Some kid playing guitar outside the Marquee." Jimmy squinted through the misty windshield, trying to get a better look. Even from this distance, he could see that something extraordinary was happening. The crowd was growing larger by the minute, and there was an energy in the air that only occurred when witnessing something truly special. "I need to get out here," Jimmy said quietly, his hand already moving toward the door handle. "Sir, maybe we should keep moving," Chaz cautioned, glancing nervously at the crowd. "There's already a lot of people there, and the meeting with Kit Lambert is crucial for getting the record deal sorted." "No, man," Jimmy interrupted, his voice filled with a wonder that his manager rarely heard anymore. "This is exactly where I need to be. Sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you're supposed to be, even when you think you should be somewhere else." Meanwhile, Mac was deep into his performance of "Hey Joe," executing guitar techniques that seemed impossible for someone his age. His 17-year-old hands moved across the fretboard with the confidence of a seasoned professional, bending notes in ways that made the simple melody soar and dive like a bird in flight. He was so completely absorbed in the music, so lost in the creative trance that all great performers know, that he didn't notice the man with the wild afro and the military jacket who was now standing at the edge of the crowd, watching with growing amazement. The whispers started slowly, rippling through the assembled listeners like waves on the Thames. "Is that? No way, it can't be. That's him, isn't it? That's Jimi Hendrix. The guy from America? Don't stare, you'll scare him off." But Jimmy's attention was completely fixed on Mac. The way the boy played reminded him powerfully of his own teenage years in Seattle. The same hunger that radiated from every note, the complete dedication to the craft that blocked out everything else in the world. This kid had something that couldn't be taught in any music school or conservatory. This was raw talent, pure and unfiltered, seasoned with real-life experience that most performers, twice his age, had never known. As "Hey Joe" reached its climactic bridge, Mac launched into a guitar solo that seemed to channel the very essence of rebellion itself. A series of rapid-fire runs followed by sustained bends that required perfect finger strength and timing. The crowd held its collective breath as the young guitarist pushed his equipment to its limits, executing techniques that professional musicians spent years perfecting. When the final notes faded and the last echo bounced off the surrounding buildings, Mac held his guitar close and nodded to his small audience in the modest way his mother had taught him. The crowd erupted in enthusiastic applause, and coins began flying into his open guitar case. Half-crown pieces, shillings, even a few pound notes from people who recognized they had just witnessed something extraordinary. But when Mac's eyes swept across the audience to acknowledge their generosity, his entire world tilted on its axis. Standing there at the back of the crowd wearing that unmistakable hair and those deep, knowing eyes was Jimi Hendrix himself. Not someone who looked like him, not a fan dressed up for a laugh, but the actual living legend who had been taking London by storm. "Bloody hell," Mac whispered, his voice barely audible over the continued applause. "This isn't real. This can't be happening." His knees started to shake, and for a moment he thought he might collapse right there on the wet pavement. The boy who had just performed with the confidence of a seasoned professional suddenly felt like what he was, a 17-year-old kid from Liverpool who was face to face with his biggest musical hero. Jimmy stepped forward slowly, carefully navigating through the crowd that was now buzzing with excitement and recognition. He removed his hat with deliberate ceremony, revealing that magnificent hair that had become as much a part of his image as his guitar playing, and flashed that enigmatic smile that had captivated audiences across America and now Britain. "That was absolutely beautiful, man," Jimmy said, his voice carrying that distinctive American drawl over the street noise. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Mac's knees nearly gave out completely. Jimi Hendrix, the most innovative guitarist on the planet, was not only talking to him, but complimenting his playing. This had to be a dream. In a few minutes, he'd wake up on the sofa bed he shared with his sister in their tiny flat, and none of this would have happened. I I listen to your records every day, Mr. Hendrix," Mac stammered, his voice cracking with emotion. "I practice with this old guitar whenever my parents are at work. They think I'm mad for playing the same songs over and over for hours." The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to witness this magical interaction unfold. Several people were attempting to take photographs with their cameras, but Jimmy seemed oblivious to the attention, his focus entirely on the young guitarist. "What's your name, brother?" Jimmy asked, kneeling down slightly so they could speak more intimately despite the chaos around them. "Marcus Thompson, sir. Everyone calls me Mac. I'm 17, and you're everything I want to be as a musician. You're the reason I believe guitar can be more than just rhythm and melody." Jimmy's eyes reflected genuine emotion. This boy reminded him powerfully of himself at that age. The raw passion for music, the dedication that bordered on obsession, the way the guitar could be both escape and expression, sanctuary and rebellion all at once. But more than that, he could see something in Mac's eyes that he recognized from his own youth. The hunger, the dream, the desperate hope that somehow music could change everything. "Mac," Jimmy said softly, reaching into his military jacket pocket, "I want you to have something very special." The crowd fell silent as Jimmy pulled out a small object wrapped in velvet cloth. It was a custom guitar pick, hand-carved from exotic wood, that he had used during his breakthrough performance at the Monterey Pop Festival earlier that year. The pick was darkened with age and use, and it seemed to glow in the streetlights. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible. People were frantically trying to get better positions to witness what was clearly becoming a moment of music history. "This pick was with me when I played Purple Haze for the first time in front of a real audience," Jimmy continued, placing it gently in Mac's trembling palm. "But I think it belongs with someone who truly understands what it means to play from the soul. Someone who reminds me why I fell in love with the guitar in the first place." Mac stared at the pick in complete disbelief, tears forming in his eyes. "I can't take this, Mr. Hendrix. It's too important. It belongs with you." "Music is meant to flow from one generation to the next, Mac. Talent like yours is meant to be nurtured and celebrated. Promise me you'll never stop playing, no matter what obstacles you face." Then Jimmy's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration, that spark of creativity that had driven him to revolutionize rock guitar. "You know what? Let's do this together. Would you like to play with me, right here, right now?" The crowd went absolutely mad. This was beyond anything anyone could have imagined when they left their flats that Friday evening. Word was spreading rapidly through Soho that something unprecedented was happening outside the Marquee Club. Mac nodded eagerly, unable to form words. This was the moment every young musician dreamed of. The chance to perform alongside their idol, to share the stage, even if that stage was just a London street, with greatness itself. Jimmy signaled to someone in the crowd, and within minutes a proper amplifier had been found and connected. The crowd made room, forming a large circle around the two guitarists as anticipation reached a fever pitch. "Let's give these people something they'll never forget," Jimmy said with that mischievous smile his fans knew and loved. As Jimmy began the opening chords of Hey Joe, something truly magical happened. Jimi Hendrix, the guitar revolutionary, and Mac Thompson, a street kid with a dream, began playing together in the middle of Wardour Street in London's Soho district. The transformation was immediate and otherworldly. Mac, who moments before had been nervous and starstruck, found his confidence again as the music enveloped him. He harmonized with his idol perfectly, his guitar weaving in and out of Jimmy's lead lines like they had been playing together for years. When Jimmy launched into one of his signature psychedelic runs, Mac found the perfect counter melody. When Mac added his own bluesy embellishments, Jimmy incorporated them seamlessly into his cosmic interpretation. For 6 minutes and 43 seconds, there was no superstar and no street performer. There was no difference in age, fame, or experience. There were just two artists sharing their love of music with the world, connected by the universal language of electric guitar and the shared understanding that rock and roll could change everything. When the final chord rang out across Wardour Street, the applause was thunderous and sustained, echoing off the buildings and seeming to shake the very foundations of London's music scene. People were crying, cheering, and many were saying this was the greatest thing they'd ever witnessed. Jimmy put his arm around Mac's shoulder and addressed the crowd with the same presence and grace he brought to concert halls across the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying clearly over the noise, "you have just witnessed something truly special. This young man has reminded me why I became a musician in the first place. He's shown me that talent, passion, and dedication know no boundaries. Remember the name Mac Thompson. Trust me, you're going to be hearing it again." The crowd erupted again, chanting Mac's name as if he were already a star. But Jimmy wasn't finished. He turned back to Mac and spoke quietly, away from the cameras and the noise, his words meant for the boy's ears alone. "I'm going to give you my manager's information," Jimmy said, pulling out a business card and writing something on the back. "We're going to make sure you get the opportunities you deserve. Talent like yours shouldn't be limited to street corners. It should be on the world's biggest stages." 3 years later, Mac Thompson stood on the stage of the Royal Albert Hall, performing for thousands of screaming fans as the opening act for The Who. Jimi Hendrix had been true to his word in every possible way. Not only had he arranged for Mac to receive guidance from some of London's most respected session musicians, but he had also connected him with the underground network of clubs and venues where real rock and roll was being born. Betty Thompson, who had been working herself to exhaustion at the textile factory, was able to reduce her hours after Mac began earning serious money from his music. They moved out of their cramped council flat into a proper house in North London where Mac could practice without disturbing anyone, and his sister Sarah was able to attend a better school. But perhaps most importantly, Mac never forgot the lessons from that life-changing September evening on Wardour Street. The importance of staying true to your artistic vision, of working relentlessly to perfect your craft, of never compromising your soul for commercial success. Today, Mac Thompson is considered one of the finest guitarists of his generation, known for his innovative fusion of blues, psychedelic rock, and British folk influences. His albums have influenced countless musicians, and his concerts are legendary for their emotional intensity and technical brilliance. In his home studio, he keeps that hand-carved guitar pick in a place of honor, not as a museum piece gathering dust, but as a daily reminder of the moment when recognition and encouragement changed his life forever. Every month, without fail, he returns to Soho, to Wardour Street, teaching guitar to kids who remind him of himself. Children from struggling families, kids who play because they have to, not because they want to. He always tells them the same thing Jimmy told him that night. Play from your heart, practice every single day, and never give up on your vision. You never know who might be listening. The story of their impromptu street performance has become part of London rock and roll folklore, inspiring countless young musicians around the world. But for Mac, the real magic wasn't captured in any newspaper article or music magazine. It was that moment when his hero looked into his eyes and saw not just a street performer trying to make a few shillings, but an artist worthy of respect, investment, and belief. Some encounters change lives in ways that ripple out for generations. Some moments transcend ordinary experience and become the stuff of legend. And sometimes, when the music is right and hearts are open, magic happens exactly where you least expect it. On a foggy street corner in London's Soho, between a revolutionary at the height of his creative powers and a boy with nothing but a dream, destiny made its move. This story serves as a powerful reminder that talent can emerge from anywhere, that kindness has the power to transform not just individual lives, but entire communities, and that rock and roll truly is the universal language that connects us all. Because sometimes the most important performances don't happen on grand stages in front of thousands of screaming fans. Sometimes they happen on ordinary street corners, where dreams are waiting to be discovered and lives are ready to be changed forever. All it takes is someone willing to stop, to listen, and to believe in the transformative power of music.